our playbook huddle. Let's see if I can make this thing full screen. So, talking about, there it is, the best ministry out there. Look at all the colors, and they move. Keynotes, David, I know you're out there. So, Freedom Church, Freedom Youth. Every Wednesday, when do we meet? We meet from 7 p.m. to 8:30. It is for middle schoolers and high schoolers. It is not for little kids. It is for middle schoolers and high schoolers, so 6th grade and up. This is a place that each week we have wholesome fun and spiritual growth. We are all about getting youth connected to Sundays. So I learned this a couple years ago. Pastor Mark had taken me, Evan, and a few other leaders to a little conference where it was a bunch of youth pastors. And they said about 85 to 90%, I think if I'm remembering correctly, leave the church once they graduate. And the pastor said something that I'll never forget. He said, they don't leave the church, they leave youth group because they never were connected to the body of the church. And so what we are trying to do is bridge the gap of, yes, youth group is amazing, it's so fun, it's awesome, but we want to connect them to Sundays, not to Wednesdays, because that ends when you graduate. And yes, we can pass you on to young adults, but even if you're not connecting to Sundays, so our full mission is constantly pushing serving on the team on Sundays. Like, let's get you connected to Sundays because that's everlasting and that's eternal. So we always want to be pushing for that. And building authentic relationships with the youth, whether that's leaders or them with other friendships. So we're constantly pushing that we are relational based off of groups and that we move towards Sundays. We don't live in Wednesdays. So what is the wind of Freedom Youth? We strive to help all youth know God, find freedom, discover the purpose, and make a difference. We are just aligning with exactly what Freedom Church is doing. And so we started off and we take our curriculum and we run it through August. We do know God, and then we move into find freedom, discover purpose, and make a difference. And we are, as camp is coming up, it's really that you hit all of them at camp, but we're really aiming for that make a difference. Like, okay, now that you've had the transformation, now whether we walked through this for a year, who can you bring along? Where's Jimmy that you can bring, and he can know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. And so we're consistently working through that. We are in experimenting phases. So since we've had a lot of transitions and a lot of things have happened, we're not acting like we have this together, but what we do know is that is our mission statement constantly, and that will not change. So we are moving in that direction always. How do we do this? We use a 90-minute youth gathering every week to grow in relationship with leaders and others. So we do this, our flow, if you were to bring, like when Evan is of age and you're like, well, what do you guys do? We have free time, and then once free time is over, we come in and we do an MC moment with a stage game or a group game, so fun to fun, right? And then once that is over, we go right into worship. We're all about worship. We will never skip worship. After worship is over, we'll go to a biblical teaching, and then we will always end in small groups. So even if we were to remove one of these elements for a week, like leading up to camp, we don't have a curriculum set, so we'll probably do some like DR teaching, right? Like a little Q&A and let them hear about the testimonies. We will always do small groups because that's what we are. We are a group. We are not just this, place that meets and it's super fun. It's like, no, we're all about discipling and walking with them through life. So we always want to make it smaller and more intimate. And I'll hit on that a little bit later. Our red, yellow, and green, if you can see that, yes, beautiful. So why are we 90 minutes is a red, and the reason for that is when we had some of these transitions take place, I've been doing this for going on 11 years now, being a part of youth, and being a volunteer for a long time, and being close to the youth's ears, just asking a lot of questions. And one of the things was, you can only have fun for so much time. And what happened was at that 2-hour mark, when we would finish small groups, you would hit this lull where we were kind of like, dang, like our leaders are burned out, like we're tired, the youth are ready to go home, but their parents aren't coming for another 30 minutes, and we would always feel like we were scrounging to find something new to do. And you only have so many games before it's like blob tag or, these musical chairs is only fun for so many times. So we learned that, man, if we can do Sundays in an hour excellence, why can't we leave 30 minutes for small groups and do an hour program before small groups? And so we've really just been leaning on that Sunday model and bringing it to a Wednesday to give them more consistency. And so we've learned that one thing that I love to say is we always want to leave them wanting more. I never want them to leave and be like, man, I can't wait to go home. And I heard a kid say that once. I was like, we will never have that set again. Like, that is not the goal, because it does get boring if you have too much time. So that is why we do 90 minutes and not 2 hours anymore. Our curriculum, I hinted on that a little bit, but this is also a red. And it is, we want to be the same heart at every campus. And I know that we do this on Sundays as well. But the reason for that is we never want to get to camp and be like, man, we've been preaching and working through this know God, find freedom, discover purpose, but one of our campuses didn't do discover purpose necessarily, because they were like, we're going to do fun. And then what happens is we feel this gap of when we're preaching to the heart, and they're like, I've never heard this before. And now they're newly learning, rather than we're all at the exact same stage because we've heard the same messages. So when we're teaching about the Bible and the principles of what God, we believe that God is calling us to, we want to make sure that we're the same hearts, because we have youth nights where we live stream them. We have invite nights where it's all based off of fun, and then we have camp where it's like that. We like to call that our home run, and really calling them to bring their friends along with them. So that is why we do curriculum. We also purchase curriculum, and then we break it down from a 25-minute sermon to 10. Another thing we have realized with this generation is the attention span, even from when I was a youth, is crazy small, like crazy small. The amount that they will Snapchat and, not pay attention. So we're really trying to get to the principle of a Bible story, 3 key points, and then go talk about it in small groups. Like, we're even looking towards, Patrick and I had a conversation, and Pastor Mark and I have multiple conversations of like, do we even need to remove a little bit more of my personal story while I'm on the stage? And we can do that in small groups, right? Like, we have plenty, we have 30 minutes in small groups. So these are things where I'm saying we're experimenting and trying to find that perfect flow where they are feeling like they're learning something, and then they can go talk about it in small groups. Like, we don't need to talk about it on the stage necessarily. So one, yellow is games. So we always offer 2 games. We have a large group game and we have a stage game. And the reason for that is we are in very different stages, and we grew what felt like overnight here in Bel Air, and we learned 2 big lessons. There is a cap of number where you can't do what you used to do, and that was a hard lesson to learn. One of those being games was when you try a large group game in here, it is insanity. And that's fun until they start to push over cameras and stuff, and I'm like, okay, so we've got to settle it back. So it's one of those, I love controlled chaos, but I don't love chaos. And so in youth ministry, we love a little bit of, crazy, but there is a line. And so with that, Lake Norman, who has 12, they might pick a game where they can all do it quiet. There's only 12 kids that need to settle that we will never be able to do again. And that's just the reality of it right now where we are in this season. But that doesn't mean we're ever trying to slow down, but we're setting a pace where every campus, like when Middle River builds their new building and they get up to 60, and that's a very different tension than 25 to 30. And so now we have games for all levels. So it doesn't slow them down, and the lesson that we learned we can pass on rather than you figuring out yourself. So, and then the final one with that is snacks. This was one, if you do research on youth group, one of the top things you will find is that snacks attract. And so that's amazing until you hit 135 kids. And then you hit that, and then you realize that Bel Air can be entitled kids who think they can take as many snacks as they want and pocket them. And so what we learned really fast was our budget wouldn't last. So we do not do snacks here. But again, at Middle River or Lake Norman, it is a green in the sense of if they're like, man, this is such a win to buy a pizza every other week, by all means do it, because you're only feeding 12 to 25. Feeding 135 is just a lot different, and we've learned that it's not necessary. They still show up. We're still crushing numbers even though we took away the snacks. So that's always a green, and there's plenty more in there, but I'm not going to go over them. And then these are some of the questions that I get all the time. Do I have to register my kid, or can we show up? Youth group, you are always welcome. We went through a season of experimenting with registering, and it honestly felt like a wall. And what happened was they were like, oh, because our church is a lot about a registration, right? Sign up for this. And so they stopped coming if they weren't registered. Or we get the emails all the time of like, hey, my kid's not registered, can I come? And we're like, yes, by all means, show up, we'll register you right there. But even that question, we wanted to remove that barrier. So the language we all say is, you can just show up at 7 p.m., okay? There is no registration. We will check you in, and if you don't have a profile, we will create you a profile. So you don't have to worry about it. I always just encourage the parents for that like next level of comfortability, walk your kids up to check-in. If you feel like it's a little bit awkward or anything, and we'll help you make the profile, and then you're done. So no, you don't have to check in. Why do you guys worship at the front on Sundays? I heard that our Jersey has been worshiping up at the front, and I heard some big wins from Pastor Dawn that it is an incredible up there. So probably a year ago, got a vision on a Sunday worship, and we had all of the leaders. We would always sit in the front, and I went up to Pastor Wade and I said, "Hey, would you care if I pushed the youth forward?" And he said, "I don't care if they get on the stage." And so I'm holding to that word. That, but it's one of those where I was like, man, when we were in youth group, like Lydia and I and all the other leaders who are leading it now, like we were at the front, like we would run here and save seats. And we had lost that somewhere in the process, and I wanted to get that back. And so we've been pushing for pick a service, and you sit in the second row or in the first row with them if there's room. But we don't want to take the seats that they're supposed to be sitting in. And what I believe is that the youth set the pace of our worship. 100%. If you want to fire up a person who is older in age, you put a youth who is on fire for God, and it relights their fire. And so we are constantly pushing to put them in the spot that they're supposed to be in, and that's how we push them up to leaders. So we're not settling for go sit with your parents. We're like, no, come sit with us. We will show you what it is to truly worship, because we're going to set the example, but we're going to worship with you, not for you. And so we've really just tried to take the place of save seats for them, and we will take the lowly spot. I'll back up 3 rows, even though I love that front row. And so that's something that the Lord put like a year ago, and we have seen it here at 1115 is in Bel Air. It gets fired up, and especially when you get back from a missions trip, they're crazy. And so it's a really awesome thing. That's why we do it. So if people ask, it's because we believe that youth set the pace of our worship. And so if that is true and we believe that, then we want to be pushing them and setting the environment where they feel welcome to worship their God. And then who is it geared towards? So this is another one that we went back and forth for like months on months. And we've just learned that if high schoolers don't stay till they graduate, we're doing something wrong. And so we gear everything towards a high schooler. So middle schoolers are welcome, and they will be there, but it is easier to win a middle schooler than it is a high schooler. So everything we do, game-wise, we put high schoolers on the stage and not middle schoolers. And it's one of those things that you're working towards being a high schooler. And when you look at middle schoolers, if you throw out jelly beans, it's the best thing they've ever seen in their lives. But a high schooler, it'll hit them and they'll act like nothing happened. And so we've just learned that if we gear it towards the people who are actually the ones that are hardest to keep in the building, then we're really going to see life change, because a middle schooler looks up to a high schooler. A high schooler does not look up to a middle schooler. And so we want them to set the pace and raise them up as leaders. So that is who we gear it towards. And then I want everybody to say this with me. How do I join the team on 3? 1, 2, 3. Great question. You can talk to me after, and you guys can all join a small group. It'll be great. So you're going to be on the team after this. No, it's super easy. You do growth track. Pick youth team. Anyone who didn't know how to do that, it's so simple. You'll be put in a workflow, and then they shadow, they join, they start at middle schooler as a person, like a co-leader, and then they work their way up. So that's how you join the team, just like we would always say, do growth track. And then this is my finale before we part ways, is it too big for my kids? And I get this more than you could imagine just because of the growth of our church. And my answer is always this: if Taylor Swift can fill a stadium, then I would hope God can fill a church. And so we're always pushing towards growth, and we're believing that every number is a soul. And so with that, what I always say is this: if we gather together on Wednesdays, they will get seen, known, and then is when we get intimate. So one thing we experiment with was Go Week, which is group outings. And through that, we've seen growth beyond anything you can imagine in the equity department. So we saw people start to find freedom. Small groups got more intimate because we moved outside of the 4 walls. And so what we are really striving for, and where I believe the Lord is taking youth as a whole, is to that group outings mindset. So we meet, we gather, but just like, it's so funny because it's our church model, but the secret sauce is groups. And we were thinking we do small groups, but that's the bare minimum. Going above and beyond for a kid is showing up to a game. Going above and beyond for a kid is saying, hey, come meet me at McDonald's on this Wednesday. Our whole small group would be there. And here's the thing that the perspective that I brought in that I didn't realize was, being a volunteer, I never did that because I had to pay for it. I had to go pick them up, and I had 5 different excuses. My car is too small. I don't have enough money. And what we've learned is this: if you will pick the date and the place, the parents will pay and drive them there. And so the lie that the devil was telling us was, I can't handle all of that. I can't pay for that many kids. And now we're starting the language of, you don't have to. The only thing you need to do is set where it is and what time, and let the parents know. And if a parent wants them to be involved and really get to be discipled, they're going to make sure they're there. So this is where we're heading, and I believe that every campus is going to flourish because of this model. And so now, A+, great job. There we go. All right, well, that is it. So campuses, we love you guys. Have a great work day, and we will see you next Tuesday.